Hello and welcome back to Reading Reveries, where you and I together lose ourselves in a little bit of reading now and again. And I am your host Kasturi. It's 10 in the night here, just after dinner for me, and I'm recording this episode from my desk. The window behind me is open, and there's a lovely cool breeze playing on my neck and shoulders. Today we are reading a chapter from Jhumpa Lahiri's non-fiction, In Other Words, called Love at First Sight. Now, of course, Jhumpa Lahiri needs no introduction. She's the author to exquisite pieces and collections like The Namesake and The Interpreter of Maladies and Unaccustomed Earth. However, In Other Words is a forage into non-fiction, but especially so into Italian. Her first book written in Italian about her blooming and trying relationship, or rather love affair, with the Italian language. It was first published in 2015 as In altre parole. Of course, I don't know Italian, so you'll have to excuse my Italian pronunciations. To get on. Now, of course, she has published also a novel in Italian called Dove mi trovo, published in 2018, and she has also recently edited the Penguin Book of Italian Short Stories, published in 2019. Very interestingly, In Other Words has not been translated into English by Lahiri herself. And she gives a very specific reason for this, and she explains this in her author's note to In Other Words. She writes, "Had I translated this book, the temptation would have been to improve upon it, to make it stronger by means of my stronger language. I wanted the translation of In altre parole to render my Italian honestly, without smoothing out its rough edges, without neutralizing its oddness, without manipulating its character." Unquote. As a reader, I can decipher that this is a very personal work to pen down her experiences of learning Italian, her struggles, her love, her thoughts, to release them in the world for millions to read. To bare her soul in such fashion requires courage. As a Bengali born in London, brought up in America, she has always had a very troubled relationship, to her own admittance, with her mother tongue. And English, though imposed on her initially, gradually grew into her dominant language, naturally. While English was her, to quote her stepmother, or again to quote her an ex-boyfriend she's tired of, Italian becomes the language she loves. And when in an interview conducted by the London Review Bookshop, she says, Italian became the language she loves because, quote, "It is a language I chose for myself. The linguistic component is the most fundamental and defining part of the problem of my identity that I've had all my life, wondering who I am, what I am. Italian represented in the beginning a refuge, escape, freedom from pressure, expectations, because no one asked or expected me to study Italian. I went in pursuit of it, quoted it, but there was that sense of desiring something that wasn't mine, which is the basis of all desire." Unquote. Reading this book has been an extremely private and personal experience for me too. It was actually meant to be a gift. That is the reason why I bought the book in the first place. And then I read the first line and I couldn't stop. And next I knew I couldn't part with the book either. My mother tongue, like Lahiri, is also Bengali. But my dominant language, or my language of choice rather, has always been English. I think better, I express better in English. And numerous times, on numerous occasions, I've been humiliated for that choice, for choosing English over my mother tongue. But I see no reason why this should be cause to humiliate one. And oppressively, I am not alone in it. There are a whole lot of people that I've connected with over the years who face the same, are facing the same. So, this is the reason why, in more than one way, this book resonates with me. And after I finished reading the book, there was no question of gifting it anymore, because it would mean parting with a very deep personal part of myself. And yet, it's a book, available in a million copies, in a million ways, to a million readers. I find that entirely paradoxical. It's been difficult to choose a book, rather a chapter to read from this book. This book that I have been involved in an intimate dance with. But for a first, I think I'll go with the chapter called Love at First Sight, which is the third chapter in the book. So here goes. Love at First Sight, from In Other Words by Jhumpa Lahiri. In 1994, my sister and I decide to give ourselves a trip to Italy as a present, and we choose Florence. I'm in Boston studying Renaissance architecture, Brunelleschi's Pazzi Chapel, the Laurentian Library of Michelangelo. We arrive in Florence at dusk, a few days before Christmas. My first walk is in the dark. I am in an intimate, sober, joyful place. Shops decorated for the season, narrow, crowded streets, some more like corridors than like streets. There are tourists like my sister and me, but not many. I see the people who have lived here forever. They walk quickly, indifferent to the buildings. They cross the squares without stopping. I've come for a week to see the buildings, to admire the squares, the churches. But from the start of my relationship with Italy is as auditory as it is visual. Although there aren't many cars, the city is humming. I'm aware of a sound that I like, of conversations, phrases, words that I hear wherever I go. As if the whole city were a theatre in which a slightly restless audience is chatting before the show begins. I hear the excitement of children wishing each other Buon Natale, Merry Christmas, on the street. I hear the tenderness with which one morning at the hotel, the woman who cleans the room asks me, "Avete dormito bene?" Did you sleep well? When a man behind me on the sidewalk wants to pass, I hear the slight impatience with which he asks, "Permesso? May I?" I can't answer. I'm not able to have a dialogue. I listen. What I hear in the shops, in the restaurants, arouses an instantaneous, intense, paradoxical reaction. It's as if Italian were already inside me, and at the same time completely external. It doesn't seem like a foreign language, although I know it is. It seems strangely familiar. I recognize something in spite of the fact that I understand almost nothing. What do I recognize? It's beautiful? Certainly. But beauty doesn't enter into it. It seems like a language with which I have to have a relationship. It's like a person met one day by chance with whom I immediately feel a connection, of whom I feel fond. As if I had known it for years, even though there is still everything to discover. I would be unsatisfied, incomplete, if I didn't learn it. I realize that there is a space inside me to welcome it. I feel a connection and at the same time a detachment, a closeness and at the same time a distance. What I feel is something physical, inexplicable. It stirs an indiscreet, absurd longing, an exquisite tension, love at first sight. I spent the week in Florence, very near Dante's house. One day, I visit the small church of Santa Margherita dei Cerchi, where Beatrice's tomb is, the beloved, the poet's inspiration, forever unattainable. An unfulfilled love marked by distance, by silence. I don't have a real need to know this language. I don't live in Italy. I don't have Italian friends. I have only the desire. Yet ultimately, a desire is nothing but a crazy need. As in many passionate relationships, my infatuation will become a devotion, an obsession. There will always be something unbalanced, unrequited. I'm in love. But what I love remains indifferent. The language will never need me. At the end of the week, having seen many palazzi, many frescoes, I return to America. I bring with me postcards, little gifts, souvenirs of the trip, and yet the clearest, most vivid memory is something immaterial. When I think of Italy, I hear certain words again, certain phrases. I miss them, and missing them pushes me slowly to learn the language. I am impelled by desire and at the same time hesitant, timid. I ask of Italian with a slight impatience. Permesso? May I? So, permesso. I'm in love with this word. I roll the word on my tongue with affection and think how delicately Lahiri is quoting her language of love. Isn't it wonderful? This book also contains her first Italian short story. In English, it's called The Exchange, but we'll keep that for another episode. With this book so intense, so passionate, so moving, I don't think I'll be able to stop. There's so much to say, actually. I'm leaving out so much, but I must stop. Let me know how you like this episode, your thoughts on Lahiri and her works in the comments. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any suggestions or ideas about what I should share, I would love to hear from you. Have a good day.